Hello, I'm Anni Davey. I've been telling Bible stories to children for a very long time, and I'd like to tell you a series of Bible stories now. So let's see what we've got on the board, shall we? Hello, I've got a lovely story for you this morning. At this time of year, it's a bit soon, but I'm thinking about Christmas. We all look forward to Christmas, don't we? Lots of nice things to eat maybe, and presents perhaps, and nice things to do, and all sorts of exciting things to do at school. And I've been looking through my old Christmas cards, and I found one or two which you might sort of recognise as well. I've got this one here of a donkey in the stable and the manger. And then this one is Joseph and Mary on the donkey travelling through the desert. And this one looks like some wise men, doesn't it? Some people say they were kings, but it doesn't say that in the Bible. And what else have we got? There's another one of Joseph walking along with Mary behind on the donkey. And they're all pictures that we associate with Christmas, aren't they? Now, the story I'm going to tell you this morning, you might think you know, but I've got some surprises in it for you. So listen up, okay? I just wondered, I expect you all know the name of the person who was very special at Christmas. Let's see what it says with my yellow letters with a red brush, shall we? Shall we read his name together? It's Jesus, isn't it? And Jesus was very, very special. People had been expecting him for a long, long time because God had made one of these. He said, one day he promised that he would send somebody to save us from all the wrong things that we think and say and do. And people had been looking forward to this for 1,000 years or more than that. Ever since Adam and Eve made a mess of things in the very beginning, God had promised that one day he would rescue us. So Jesus was going to be the answer to this promise. And it was very exciting. But there was a problem because the land that they were living in, we call it the Holy Land today, was ruled by the Romans. And the Romans had said that everybody must go to their hometown to have an account, to be taxed. They wanted lots of money to help run the country and run the emperor, who was a bit of a shocker. Anyway, so Joseph and Mary were from the royal family of David. And so they had to go all the way back to this town here. I expect you know the name of it. It was should we read it together? It was Bethlehem. And Bethlehem wasn't a very big town, but it was the town where King David was. And so it was known as David's city. We sing Once in Royal David City, don't we, about Bethlehem. And so we've got two people in this story so far. We've got Mary, and we've got her husband. And Joseph was a very sensible man. When God was thinking about who he could look after Mary with when she was going to have his baby, he chose Joseph. So Joseph must have been a very sensible, God-fearing, kind, helpful man. And he would never have taken Mary all the way from Nazareth to Bethlehem on the back of a donkey when she was due to have a baby any minute. It just wasn't sensible. And the Bible doesn't say that that's what happened. The Bible says that while they were there, the time came for the baby to be born. So she wasn't arriving about to have the baby and in a panic. It was all thought about well ahead. The other thing that's interesting was that the Bible has got some strange translations in it, the old ones. And modern scholars, people who know about language nowadays, say that they didn't get it quite right. So when they said that the word kataluma meant an inn or a hotel, that wasn't quite right. Actually, kataluma means guest accommodation, a guest room, a spare room. There wasn't an inn in Bethlehem. The archaeologists have looked for one, but they haven't found any sign of an inn in the old town. So that's a bit of the story which we're going to have to cross out. There wasn't an inn. So there wasn't any possibility of Joseph going from door to door, knocking on the door and saying, please can we come in, my wife's about to have a baby, we know where to go. because there's a tradition, in fact it was a law, that they should always offer care and hospitality to a traveller, whoever it was. And Joseph and Mary were the royal family. It would have been like having Kate and Will's coming to the door and saying, please can we come and stay? You wouldn't say, no, haven't got room for you, would you? You'd say, well, we'll move over, we'll make room. And so if the guest rooms were full, that's what they'd have done. Houses weren't like our houses in those days. I'll show you what I've drawn on here a little bit like it was. We'll pretend we're at the front door, okay? So we're at the front door, and as we go in, we're in the stable, because they kept their animals right by the front door. So this would have been the straw here. We've got some sheep, and we've got a donkey. They might have had an ox if they were very rich people pulling the plough. But the animals would be right by the front door. It was a bit like that in England years ago in the Middle Ages. In fact, when my husband was a little boy, which is over 80 years ago now, a long time ago, he was sometimes sent to see Miss Reed, who lived nearby in the country, to get some eggs. And Miss Reed lived in a one-room hovel. Hovel is a sort of a shed place. It was a very, very old cottage. And she lived with her chickens and her sheep in one room. And in the wintertime, she slept with them to keep warm. That's just the way she was. And he used to go and have to buy some eggs and take them home carefully to his mum without dropping them. And so it was normal to go in through the front door. Here are the animals. You've got 3 steps, 1, 2, 3. And there is the room in front of you where the family lived. They didn't have well, they might have had an upstairs, but that would have had an outside staircase. That might have been guest accommodation, but that was full up. So let's see, we've got the mum here. She's perhaps kneeling down, cooking the dinner. Better give her a head, hadn't we? She's allowed to have her hair down because she's in the house. There she is. And perhaps there's the dad. He's standing by watching, wondering when dinner's going to be ready. Better give him a hat, a head as well. Can't have headless people, can we? There they are. And so if somebody knocked on the door and said, please could we stay the night, they wouldn't say, no, you can't, because that was the honour of the town was at stake. You had to welcome the travellers. You had to do it. It was one of those things. So they would have said, well, there's not much room because the guest accommodation's full, but you are what does that word there say? Can you read it? You are welcome. Wow, how lovely. So they'd have welcomed them in, and at night time they'd have put their cooking things away, and they'd have got out their sleeping bag mats and unrolled them on the floor, and they would all have slept together in one room. And then when the time came for the baby to be born, and Mary knew that she was getting tummy aches and things, the women in the house would have said, right, men folk, off you go outside, we'll deal with this. And so the men would go outside into the street, and the baby would be safely born and wrapped up snugly in swaddling clothes. That's a sort of a linen bandage that went round and round. My granny was a midwife, and she said babies like to be wrapped up tightly, makes them feel safe and secure. They're used to being in a tight place, aren't they? So the baby was wrapped up in snugly swaddling clothes, and then they put him in the safest place they could find, which was the manger. They put him in the manger. So he'd have put safely in there, where he'd have been. Nobody could tread on him, the animals couldn't reach him, and nobody would be worried about him. And then they'd make the announcement out in the street, there's a baby boy being born. And oh my goodness, the excitement. And so everybody would have been thrilled. And out in the hills, there were these people here. Shepherds, they look after the sheep, don't they? And these were special shepherds because it was their job to raise the special sheep that were used at the temple in Jerusalem. So they were very special shepherds. And it must have been October, not December, when Jesus was born, because by December the 25th, the snow had come and it would have been too cold out on the hills. So we think that Jesus was probably born about the 8th of October. He had 2 birthdays, like the Queen did. So an official birthday and a real birthday. So the shepherds would have been out there watching the flocks. They probably wouldn't have been in the house by then. And suddenly there was this great big light. And an angel was standing there, And they said, don't be afraid. Oh my goodness, that's a big ask, isn't it? Well, you've never, and this huge light and this great big angel standing there. And so they must have been terrified. They probably put their faces on the ground to hide. And the angel said, no, don't be afraid. This is the most amazing news, because the baby Jesus has been born, and you'll find him in Bethlehem, and he'll be wrapped up in swaddling clothes and lying in a manger. Go and have a look. And the next thing they knew, the sky was filled with light, and they could hear choirs of angels singing praise to God. It was so exciting. It must have taken their breath away. Anyway, they quickly wrapped themselves up and ran back down the hill, all the way down, all the way to Bethlehem. And then they found that everybody was partying in the street because the baby boy had been born. It would have been easy to find that house that night. So in they went, and they saw the baby, and they were very, very thrilled. And then, so we've got shepherds, and we've got angels. And all because of this. Shall we read it together? God's promise. Jesus had come true. All God's promises come true. Sometimes we have to wait quite a long time, and they'd waited a long, long time for Jesus to come. But Mary remembered all these things, and the Bible says that she treasured them up in her heart. It was so special. And Dr. Luke, when he came along, must have spoken to her about it, because she gave him all the details about what happened. The other people that we've got on our Christmas card are these people here. They were called Magi. Some people say they were 3 kings, but the Bible doesn't say that. I'll tell you about them another time, because that's another story in itself. But they weren't actually there at the birth of Jesus. They came a bit later on, when he was a bit bigger and living in his own house. So, what a lovely story. And the reason that Jesus came was that we could be welcome in his family. That whatever we said or done or thought that's wrong and horrible, Jesus said he would forgive us. He'd give us a fresh start. And that's one of the reasons that God sent him, to know that God wasn't far away and angry. He loves each one of us very much, and he loves each one of you. So I hope you'll remember that. And I look forward to telling you another story another time. God bless you.